recorded. We will be muting all microphones. To ask questions, please type them in the chat area, and the moderator will review and pass them along to the presenter. If you're unable to utilize the chat feature, please use the raise your hand feature and you will be called on. Both are located on the bar where you scroll over the meeting screen. Please do not share any personal identifiable information, as these sessions are non-confidential. We suggest you keep your camera off, as this helps to keep bandwidth down and improves connectivity. Thank you, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're very honored to be a part of this year's Stand Down. We are from the Kennedy Center's Mobility Services Department, as described, and we'll be giving you an overview of transportation information, including mobility management, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and travel training. Please let me begin by thanking you for your service. If I can speak for my team, we greatly appreciate what you and your families have done and continue to do for our country. So thank you. Next slide, please. So mobility, oh, that's not our first slide. So I'm just going to continue. The Kennedy Center is typically known for working with persons with disabilities. We're based in Trumbull, Connecticut, but we cover a lot of the state with certain services. So as a mobility manager, I go out to senior centers, to housing authorities, any place that will have me, and give out the information that I'm going to share with you today. So the state of Connecticut is divided into 5 mobility regions. I'll talk a little bit about them. Next, now this is our last slide.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. The
Problem.
full one that Mike sent me did not. That is not the one I opened. Let me pull it from here. Angela, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, I'm looking to, apparently
So we do see it. We're seeing your PowerPoint screen.
No,
and
unfortunately, that's an abbreviated version. That's not the full slide.
The one I'm seeing now is the full presentation.
yeah, it does look like it because we're seeing different slides that we didn't see that you had up first.
You can see it now? Okay, how do I get the screen back? Oh.
There we go. We're seeing you moving around. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have 2 monitors? Is that making it?
I have 3 monitors.
Okay, so that's where, yeah, it gets kind of. All right, so now if you go one forward, let's see if it looks like, yep, you're on track.
Okay. All right.
Recess, please call the receptionist.
Sorry, we're in the office.
Recess, please call the receptionist.
Okay, I'm going to continue. So we are the Kennedy Center, located in Trumbull, Connecticut. We're typically known for working with persons with disabilities. We have day programs. We have businesses that are run by and for our individuals, such as landscaping and maintenance. Next slide, please. We are the Mobility Services Department. So we're a little bit of an offshoot from the typical services provided by the Kennedy Center. Next slide. We are funded in part by the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and I'll talk a little bit more about them and how they help us out. So again, as I stated, I go out to senior centers as the mobility manager. Next slide. I also go to housing authorities, senior residences. Next slide. And any outreach events that are going on in my region, which I'll get to, anyone that will have me to share this information. Next slide, please. We also attend the councils of government. They're also called COGS, and these are monthly meetings of the mayors, first selectmen, or their designees. So we sit in on these meetings, and we are a voice and an ear for people in the meetings and the people that we serve. Next slide. So Connecticut is divided into 5 mobility regions. Each region has 1 mobility manager. Next slide. I'll run through the regions quickly. We have the Northwest Connecticut portion of Connecticut that is also managed by the Kennedy Center. Next slide. An agency called Way to Go manages the North Central or Hartford and out region. Next slide. ECTC manages the eastern portion of the state. Next slide. The New Haven region or South Central Connecticut is also managed by the Kennedy Center. Next slide. And Southwest Connecticut, which is my region, is also managed by the Kennedy Center. Next slide. So you can see there's so many towns and regions, or towns and cities that we have to know the transportation options and districts for. There's a lot to know. I'm going to break it down and just focus on Southwest Connecticut. That's my region, but I'm going to give you the contact information for all regions at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to take any screenshots. If you want to unmute if we're going too fast and you can write something down, just let us know. Next slide. So knowing all the transit districts, again, is a big task. There's at least 14 in the state with other individual smaller run districts. So we do have to keep up with the modifications because of COVID and any other changes that are being made as services are being reinstated. Next slide. So again, my region is Southwest. You can see the 18 towns and cities that I need to be knowledgeable about as far as the transit districts. The districts in my region are GBT, Greater Bridgeport, Norwalk, Milford, VTD is Valley Transit District, and CT Transit. Next slide. So just to talk specifically about some of the terms, fixed route bus is the buses that we are pretty aware of. If someone said bus, this is what you're thinking of, the long bus. Typically, you would enter in the front, pay the fare by the driver, and exit through the door in the middle of the bus or the rear of the bus. Of course, with modifications, the fares are on hold right now, and we're entering in the back of the bus. Next slide. This is a GBT PSA. So again, they're asking people to wear a mask and enter through the back of the bus. This is going to change. We're getting some word that in October, they're going to be changing, the fares are going to be reinstated. So you will be entering the front of the bus, paying the fare. It's different for some different transit districts. We're hearing October 5th, October 15th. So if you're riding the bus, just check to see when the fares in your region are being reinstated. Next slide. So again, fixed route means that the bus runs one route all day long. It has a starting point and an end point that does not change throughout the day. These are all of GBT's routes to give you an idea of how much services they do throughout the day. Next slide. And these are the ones in Milford. So you can see they are connected by the coastal link, that yellow line on this slide, and on the other one, it ran from Norwalk to Milford. So it goes from the Post Mall all the way to Norwalk and runs that route all day long. So depending on where you're going and where you're coming from, you can get there using public transportation. So like I said, the buses are free until October. There's no fares. And it will be reinstated. Next slide. Typically, it's $1.75 for 90 at noon. I go 1:30. I can make transfers and not pay anything else. If after 1:30 I want to get on another bus, I do have to pay again the $1.75. Next slide. Connecticut DOT does offer what's called the Reduced Fare Transit Photo ID. As you can see, this is a physical card, and it is that yellow. It's a very yellow card. It's very easy to see if you throw it on your counter or you have it in your wallet or your bag. It's for seniors, which is 65 and older, or persons with disabilities. And you can see it doesn't have a lot of identifying information on it. This reduces the fare from $1.75 to 85 cents. Your Medicare card also does the same thing. You can get that rate. But if you lose your Medicare card, that's more of a problem than if you lose this card. Next slide, please. This is the application, so it's very descriptive. It tells you which bus systems and rail systems honor this card. It does cost $5 for the initial card, $10 if you lose it, and you do need a photo. Oftentimes I'll go out to the outreach programs, like I said, or the senior centers, and I will bring a printer with me so I can take your photo, so you don't have to go somewhere else for that photo. So you leave with the photo and the application. So you just need to get the $5 to get the reduced fare photo ID. Next slide. So again, that will reduce the bus fare to 85 cents when they are reinstated. Next slide. What if you can't take the fixed route bus? There's other options. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Rosenbauer. She's our CT-ADA advisor, and she'll tell you more about this.
Thanks, Meg. All right. Hi. So what do you do if you can't take the fixed route bus? What's available to you? We'll look at the next slide, please. What will be available to you if you are located within a transit district is what's called ADA Paratransit. Paratransit is door-to-door service that is operated by the transit district under the guidance of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's intended for use for folks who, because of a disability or a disabling condition, cannot use the fixed route bus. It's not an all or nothing proposition. There are times that folks can use a fixed route bus for some routes and can't use a fixed route bus for others, and that's where paratransit comes in. As you can see, the buses are smaller. They're equipped with a lift. There are usually two bays in that bus that can accommodate wheelchairs and other mobility devices. And it's there so that folks who have disabilities have the same access to transportation as folks who don't have disabilities. Next. So what's one of the main differences? Well, one of the main differences, of course, is the fare. The fare for paratransit is $3.50, and that's each way. So a round trip fare on a paratransit bus is $7. And that does sound pricey, except that remember what a cab costs. This is a door-to-door service. Now, it's a little bit different than a cab, so I don't like to make that comparison too lightly because it is not an on-demand service. In order to use paratransit, you have to call at least 24 hours in advance. You can call sooner than that if you need to, but you can't just call that morning and say, I need paratransit. You not only need to tell them where you're going, but you need to book your trip coming home. That can cause a little bit of, if you're going to a doctor's office and you're not quite sure when you're going to be finished, it kind of, you need to get used to using it. I say the paratransit is something you should use before you need it. You should be going to places like the grocery store where you can really decide when you're going to need to come home before you start using it for really important things like doctor's offices. Just because you get good at using it. Practice makes perfect with this, just like at anything else. It runs 3/4 of a mile off of the fixed bus route. And I think that that's very important to note that though it is door-to-door service, you still need to be within a proximity of the fixed route bus. And again, we talked about what the fixed route bus is. And not only your origin, but your destination needs to be near 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route bus. So often people think that they're eligible for paratransit, and they may very well be, but they're not in the service area. So again, something to think about. Next. Unfortunately, because of the cost of providing this service, the half-price fare does not, it isn't available on paratransit. Now, that doesn't mean that if you can use both, that you can't use your reduced fare photo ID on the fixed route bus, ride for 85 cents, and then there may be a trip that's really difficult for you that you can't take on the fixed route bus, and you just spend the $3.50 on the paratransit. I mean, it's important to remember that there's a combination of services that the transit district offers that can be made. Some people can't use a combination. Some people need all paratransit, but it's nice to know that it isn't all or nothing. You can kind of take what works for you. Next. So ADA requirements to use paratransit. Well, the one thing that you have to remember is that there is an application to use paratransit. You need to fill out an application. It needs to be evident that you are unable to use the fixed route bus for one reason or another. And again, it's a very wide, there's lots of opportunity to use paratransit, much more than folks think. I think that they think that if they don't use a wheelchair that they're not eligible, and that's just not true. There's lots of reasons. There are barriers that may be present that keep you, physical barriers from you getting to your bus stop that may be present that keep you from using the fixed route bus. So there's a lot taken into consideration. The application, although it's very thorough, isn't ridiculously difficult, and it's extremely easy to access, and we'll show you on the next slide. So this is one of the ways that you access the application for paratransit. This is a website, ctada.com, and you'll see my number is in that little box, and Meg very nicely made it bigger. It's the littlest, tiniest number on earth. I could never say it, but there you have it. You won't get me directly. You will leave a message and I will call you back, but it will be me that you speak to. The good news about this application is that it comes in two forms. So there's the hard copy, which is quite lengthy. It lends itself to be filled out incorrectly just because there's lots of questions, and I think people get a little bit overwhelmed by it. There's lots of instructions. Again, they did as good a job as can be done with something that's asking personal questions that need to be filled out correctly and in a way that the folks reading it understand what exactly your needs are. But then there's another way to apply, and that is online. The good news is if you don't have a computer, if you don't have access to an online application, you do have access to me. And you can call me at this number and I can either help walk you through it or I can actually do the application for you. That would be a decision that you would need to make. You don't know me, and there are some personal questions on the application, and I would certainly never expect somebody to share information with me unless they're comfortable doing it. Just that disclaimer. But it does certainly make it convenient to do that application. So that's really that's your first step. That's your first step in using paratransit. Generally speaking, you're interviewed, you have an in-person interview, but during this time of COVID, the interviews are being done over the phone, and we are depending on what's called a professional verification, which means somebody to call to verify that the claims that are on there, that what you say backs up what you need to have to use paratransit. Next. A little bit more about paratransit. I think that and people often confuse paratransit with dial-a-ride, and in fact, they call it dial-a-ride. Those terms are used very interchangeably, but there are some differences. And one of the main differences, I think, in most dial-a-rides is that you have on Tuesday, you go to Stop and Shop. On Wednesday, it's for doctor's appointments. On Thursday, you're going for trips. On Monday and Friday, it's for folks who want to go to the park. So you're signing up for trips that are designated days for specific trips. Paratransit, we can go to the next slide. The beauty of paratransit is like the regular bus. There is no trip preference. Nobody asks you when you get onto a city bus, onto a fixed route bus, where you're going. It's nobody's business. We need to know where you are with paratransit just so we can get the address to drop you off there. But the fact of the matter is you can use paratransit to go to school, to work, to go to medical appointments, to go to places of worship, to go see your friends, to go see your family, to go see your shopping, to just go to the park if you would like to. There is no trip preference. Nobody's going to say to you, well, unfortunately, you want, I know you only want to go to Stop and Shop, but somebody else needs to go to the doctor. It doesn't work that way. Paratransit is to be used for your needs to get from point A to point B in a timely and comfortable fashion. So that's it. And I am now going to turn this back over to Meg. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Mary. So as Mary said, paratransit is not same-day service. Riders are given a half-hour pickup time, so you have to be ready. It's door to door. The drivers can't enter the building, so you definitely have to have someone to help you if you need help with your bags in your home. And the drivers cannot go into your medical appointments with you. They can drop you off at the doctor's front door. And a personal care attendant, this is someone who can go with you, and they ride at no cost. So if you do need somebody to help you on that day, you can take somebody and they don't have to pay. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to review some other options besides public transportation. And again, I'm focusing on Southwest Connecticut because that is my region. So this is just a taste of what else is out there. Next slide, please. I have a guidebook called Know How to Go. Again, it's for Southwestern Connecticut. If you wanted me to mail this to you or email it to you in PDF form, I'm happy to do it. Next slide. There's a lot of information in this book regarding transit districts, bus lines, railroad, ferries, senior centers, and the towns in my region are listed to include transportation providers, the services that they provide, the area they cover, whether or not their vehicles are wheelchair accessible, how much does it cost, where are they going, is it just to the grocery store, only to doctors, or what else do they provide? And eligibility requirements, is there an age requirement or do you have to have a disability? The application required refers to what Mary talked about as the ADA application at ctada.com. Next slide. So again, just to give you an idea, if you have a senior center where you live, check in to see what kind of transportation services they provide. At the Bigelow Center in Fairfield, they have trips that go to medical appointments, to grocery stores. You do have to make appointments. There might be a little bit of a fee, so you just want to check. Next slide. And again, this is just information for Bigelow that I wanted you to see. During COVID, they did modify their trips, the times, the number of places they go to, the number of trips they make. They do require a mask, so you have to make sure you have a mask. Next slide. But again, there's rules surrounding them. So check for your senior center and check to see what they offer as far as transportation. Next slide. The American Cancer Society, they offer rides to cancer treatment. They had suspended them during COVID. People are opening up more and more. So again, this is a call to make to see if they are offering this, or if you wanted to call myself or Mary or someone that, whoever's in your region for the regional mobility manager, and they can provide you the information. But it's always good to call ahead. Next slide. Same with ALS. So if someone unfortunately suffers from Lou Gehrig's disease and they need to go to treatment, they offer rides as well. Next slide. There's a service called GoGo Grandparent. So you might have heard of Lyft or Uber. If you were to schedule a ride with Lyft or Uber, you'd have to get on your computer or your smartphone and go through their app or their website and schedule a ride that way. Well, they realized that they were missing a population that needs their services, specifically seniors, persons that don't have computer access or don't have a smartphone. Maybe they just have the landline or a flip phone. So you can call from any phone, and you don't have to be a certain age to be a grandparent. If you want to call from a flip phone or a landline to schedule their transportation, this is how you do it. They're also delivering meals and groceries. So you can call them to go pick up your Stop and Shop order from Peapod. Or if you order from a restaurant, they will go get it for you. You don't have to go and get into the car and go get it. They'll deliver it for you. Next slide. There's a service called M7. It used to be called Metro Taxi. This is a statewide taxi service. And as you can see, they have wheelchair accessible vehicles. So anyone in the state can call M7 and use them as a taxi service. Next slide. They have a program called New Freedom Fund Taxi Voucher Program. This is for persons with disabilities. So again, that application that Mary described through CTADA.com, you'll have to have filled that out and be deemed eligible to use the New Freedom Fund Taxi Voucher Program. With this program, you can get a 50% off taxi rate. So you call to get your ride. You have a card that looks like the card that's on the screen right now. You put money on that card. The money is matched dollar for dollar. So whatever, if you put $25 on, you're going to get $50 on. So your ride is 50% off the normal cab rate. Next slide. And you have to know where this applies. So if you are leaving from or traveling to any one of the towns that have a color, the green, yellow, blue, purple, orange, red, you can use this New Freedom Fund Taxi Voucher Program. For example, if I'm leaving from Trumbull and going anywhere, I can use it because Trumbull is a purple town, so it's licensed. The New Freedom Fund is licensed in that town. If I'm going from Greenwich to Stamford, currently I cannot use the fund, but M7 is looking to expand this service throughout Southwestern and also into Northwestern Connecticut. So we talk with them at least once a month, and we let them know how valuable their service is and how many people do need it. So they're looking to expand. Next slide. So just to let you know what M7 is doing during COVID, they are giving masks and gloves to all their passengers. The drivers, of course, wear their PPE. They clean between rides and sanitize at the end of the day. So they're following strict sanitizing practices. Next slide. This is another program that M7 has coming soon. They're teaming up with the Greater Hartford Transit District for a program called Encompass. So this is for persons 60 years or older or someone with a disability. It costs $5 for the first 8 miles. This is an on-demand service. So anytime, any day, any reason you call like it's a taxi, but there is a discount. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over now to Mike Faustine. Mike is our travel trainer, and he's going to tell you about our travel training program. Mike?
Hi, as Meg said, my name is Michael Faustine. I'm the travel trainer for the Northwest region of Connecticut. I've been with the Kennedy Center for 16 plus years. And what we do is teach people who have physical, cognitive, or psychological disabilities and seniors how to use the fixed route bus and train system. We can teach you how to get to the destination of your choice for work, medical, or leisure. Or if an individual has anxieties about using the bus, we could just take you out on a general training to help you get comfortable using public transit. For more information on this free service, and I emphasize free service, the only thing the individual will be responsible for is the bus fare. Please contact myself or any of the listed mobility managers. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Next slide. So again, just reiterating what Mike said, you only pay for the bus or train fare. The instruction itself is free. Next slide. So again, I'm going to give you the contact information, and I wanted to bring you back to this map so you can see how the regions are distinguished in Connecticut: Northwest, North Central, Eastern, South Central, and Southwest. So the next couple of slides will give you the contact information for each region. Again, if you wanted to write it down, if we go too fast, slow us down, or you can take a screenshot or a photo. Next slide. So the regional mobility managers. In Northwest, April Chaplin covers that region. The eastern part of the state is covered by ECTC as mentioned. There's their information. North Central, that's Marlene Schemp. She's with Way to Go, Connecticut. Southwest, this is my information here. Again, my name is Meg Hafner. And South Central, think New Haven and out, that's Lori McElwee. There's her information there. Next slide. Our travel trainers are statewide as well. So we have Northwest, you heard from Mike Faustine, that's his information. Brett Christensen covers the entire state of Connecticut for us. North Central, again, the Hartford region is Kathleen Maldonado. The Southwest region is Steve Kish, my coworker there. And South Central is Mike Delia. So feel free to copy that information down or take a screenshot. Next slide. And here is Mary's information. As you saw on the CT80A website slide, this is her phone number. So also here is her email address at the Kennedy Center. Next slide, please. So again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your service. Enjoy your day. If you have any questions or if there are any questions in chat, we can answer them now. Do we have any questions? Jeannie, do we have any questions?
We do not have any questions in the chat.
Okay.
I think that was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Meg, Mary, and Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll go ahead and end the session. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.